All right, Warriors. Hey, look at what we're going to do today. We're going to go over something that has really changed a lot of people in the last few years. Um, I think it was made, at least popularized by Kevin Samuels. You can look at him up on the YouTube. But
Mm-hmm.
basically, what this is what people do to each other in terms of relationships. And one of those things that makes me pull my hair out is what Kevin Samuels explains as sign language. Now, brother, let me tell you, sign language is, woo, you can think of it on all sorts of different terms. It stands for shame, insults, guilt, and the need to be right. And that's what we're going to go through today. We're going to try to break down how each part of the relationship can be affected by those things, and
Right.
then we can go out and do it. So, Warrior Waldo, you have done a little bit of thinking on this particular subject. What type of shame do you see, or maybe even better, maybe what do you see in the outside world rather than my mother's attic here that we're sleeping in?
Right.
We're not sleeping.
Well, Kevin, first of all, when he said sign was supposed to be a signal for toxic people, toxic women in general, but he was referring to women, but it could be to men too,
Sure.
toxic people.
It,
Shame. Wow. I mean, I could just get started with, you know, being accused of not being a good father. And
oh,
I don't mean coming right out and saying you're not a good father, but saying things like, your son is this way on Facebook because your dad isn't, he doesn't discipline enough, or I don't discipline enough.
wow.
Nitpicking little things I've done with my kids. Um, it's
So we got people who aren't even like directly in your life currently, like right in front of you, dogging you for some stuff. What is that?
that is
Like,
basically, uh, to to me, it is. I feel like they're hiding their own insecurities by blaming, well, you got him too, or you're worse than I was when it comes to raising kids. I don't know how to explain it. I know that must sound kind of crazy. I don't quite know how to explain it. But people are, there's kids, as you know, they don't come with a instruction guide.
no,
Everyone's going to make mistakes and all that.
sure.
But when you got people who are pointing out your mistakes, either being their mother, your own family, uh, and the need to to try to compare my kids to someone else's kid. Like this kid, look at the way they are compared to yours because yours, and my kids, you know, when I'm talking personal stuff, they made mistakes.
Everybody makes mistakes. Sure.
But the shame part comes when they saying it's your fault that they're
Mm.
doing this, and that you didn't raise them right, you didn't raise them better. Shame could be, I mean, me and you have talked about all the different examples. Shame could be something as you're not into our relationship because you didn't do this on a particular day. You're terrible. I think you've got some examples of that too.
Definitely.
Um, God, shame could be, you know, especially when they're using it. And I don't want to get too personal, but when they're using certain examples to justify their own behavior. Does that make
Oof.
sense?
I. Yes, it makes perfect sense, and that's what's so frustrating about it. I mean, that's for your example. That's difficult
Right.
because I don't assume that the vast majority of people are trying to be bad parents. Uh, like you said, we all make mistakes. But if you're in a relationship, either being a significant other, a family member, uh, another warrior here on the internet, I mean, if they're just trolling you just to be a be a troll, then okay, whatever, we don't have to deal with them. When it comes from somebody that's a bit closer than that, I mean, that makes the individual feel some sort of way. My ex-wife loved to shame me. She knew exactly which button to press,
Right.
and I was prideful. That's one of my sins. However, we were doing some pretty cool stuff, and to try to shame me, to ground me, or to keep me based, that seems like a bad way of trying to explain that I just want to get you.
It's absolutely a form of manipulation. And I think as we get through all the letters of the acronym of sign language, they're all forms of manipulation, I think. Try to get you to do something you'd rather do is by telling you are a bad husband because you didn't do this, that, or the other. You're a bad father because you didn't do this, that, and the other. And of course, I would imagine men do the same thing to women as a mom or in a marriage, as relationships. So this applies to everybody.
No, everyone!
But I think, as me and you kind of spoke earlier, all these acronyms are going to end up leading to the same thing as we'll get to toward the end. Um, yeah, and I think shame is probably might be the most hurtful. Now I know the eye might seem like it, but shame really hits at the heart when it's accusing you of being something you're not. You didn't do this, you didn't do that,
Sure.
and you know you're trying your best, but you're not getting credit for it. And man, I can go so many examples. I'm trying not to get too personal here, but
There's definitely a lot of things that can come out when you're in any type of relationship, whether it's your boss at work, or it's your significant other at home, or it is the cashier that you go to every time at your coffee shop because they know your drink.
right.
If that barista tried to tell you, hey, you're kind of wimpy for wanting some non-fat milk in there, you should go full fat like all the other men. And it's like, well, you don't need to shame me and tell me I'm not a man. I mean, I suppose that kind of brings in the insults part of the sign language, the I. But if the barista is just trying to tell you, or even better, you shouldn't be having full fat milk, you're getting kind of big.
I think you hit on something that it just dawned on me. In today's world, men are being told what they're supposed to be. And if you're not like that, you're shamed into it. You could say something to express your feelings, and all of a sudden, you're misogynist, or it's all part of the patriarchy or something like that.
Sure.
You could be shamed into thinking you're a racist.
When it can have nothing to do with race whatsoever.
Exactly, but to me, when people try to shame you, it's like I am trying to avoid what you're talking about by going straight to trying to attack your feelings. You can't say this way or think this way, because I would imagine people will listen to what we're saying right now and they're going to try to shame us and that we're being a certain way about.
Funny how that works.
Right.
Oh God. Sorry, it just blows my mind.
Yeah. Letting other people who shouldn't be telling men how they need to be, it's very, very, very toxic. It could be one of the most toxic things in a relationship when it returns to sign language. This is how a husband is supposed to be. This is how a man's supposed to be. And if you're not like this, then it's your fault because you're not being what you're supposed to be as a husband or a man.
Right.
Easy to call you misogynistic if you so much as disagree with someone or express an opinion that they may not be in agreement
with. And that's another thing. It's okay to have differences of opinion, showing that you don't have to show somebody a value judgment and shame them because they're degenerates because you feel some sort of way. I don't know. It really gets into it, and then we once we get past some of the shaming, or if we don't even care about the shaming, uh, and just to make sure everybody knows, you do it. I'm sorry, Warriors. Every single, no matter who you are, no matter what you do,
You may not realize it.
you just have some self reflection, Warriors. We can figure this out. Um, but sometimes self reflection is hard to do when you're being insulted constantly.
Right.
When you're being told your mask is stupid. When this is my mask. This is how I go to war every day.
Right.
Obviously, I'm not talking about this mask. It's a metaphor for what the more meta conversation is. But just to insult your significant other, your boss, a friend, because you are feeling in some sort of way, makes it. What type of insults have you encountered in your relationships?
Well, you know what? You hit on something. Another really important thing when you're talking to warriors, in particular, because we get affected by deployments and come home and act a certain way. I've been told that not overreact. I've been accused of being childish
Childish.
if I respond a certain way during an argument. We come home and we're not really good, and we have never been very good about decompressing coming home from a deployment.
Okay,
And
yeah.
so you come home and you may be you may be act a certain way, and I'm not saying it's not justifying your behavior. We know we do things to work on it to make ourselves better.
Sure.
But it doesn't help if we're being shamed or being you're this, and this because you're come up and they're not trying to understand why you are the way you are.
It's very hard for them to say, you're never home, when we are out doing our job. And it's unfortunately, for the two of us being an EOD, our job, our money is made on the front lines. We're out there with people who are trying to serve this country, and to try to insult us by saying you're gone all the time. Well, didn't you already figure that out when you started to date us or whatever? I mean, I'm putting this in a relationship thought process. What? That's a pretty dumb insult. I mean, yes, it makes me feel some sort of way. So your insult got me, definitely, but.
So I mean, are we getting into the eye of sign language now?
Yeah, the insults just run rampant sometimes.
So, shame and insults, they kind of go together, because they could accuse you of you doing this and this, or they could in fact call you a crappy husband, a crappy father. You're not a real man because you do this, this, and this. You're a wimp. That's an insult. You're and I don't think insults have to be derogatory. They could sit there and say you're a racist because you disagreed or something, or made a comment about something that it's maybe about a particular person, but it didn't mean you talk about people in general.
Right.
Insults are a way to shame someone, to me, in a sense. You mentioned a lot of good insults. I'm drawing a blank at what I've been called, because I've been called a lot.
There's just so many.
Well, you kind of block it out after a while. When we're sticking to relationships in a marriage, that's kind of what I'm thinking. If you know, your own parents, family can insult you by calling you different things. I mean, how do you feel? To me, an insult is a name you're being called, but instead of saying you're a bad father, they're saying you do this and this and this. Is it an insult, or are they shaming, or is it both?
Well, in a lot of cases, it probably is both.
Right.
None of the letters in sign language, as Kevin Samuels made it popularized, they are all interconnected. and they are not mutually exclusive, meaning you can have two or three things going. You can have all four letters going at the same time. That doesn't mean they're both like it's only one thing. Like if you're getting guilted into doing something and then shamed for doing that and
Or
then
not doing
insulted
it.
for,
Yeah.
exactly. They're all interconnected, but they all can be separate too. So, and that's what we'll get into here in a little bit, how they all get together. But the insults are one of those things where it just, for me, if you're gonna be insulting people, well, one, make it funny. So all you warriors out there who are insulting us, please make it funny, because I want to laugh,
Right.
and I want to feel good about your hatred for me. If you just said, yeah, that sucks, oh, yeah, okay. But if you're saying that you hate my mask because it's stupid and I should just be on the internet talking without something, this is what we're trying to do. It's not trying to be whatever you're trying to do. This is us trying to get out to the public what's going on, and we think that we're doing it in a way that can be productive. Right. You don't have to throw jabs at us, throw insults at us to do things.
I think for me, someone if it calls me an insult on the internet, because I don't care about their opinion. It's not the same thing. If I say to you, you are a child, because of an argument may have happened and she wasn't agreeing with what you were saying, whatever, and she just dismisses you and says, you're a child, how would that make you feel?
Well, I mean, if this is a significant other, I would certainly take it much differently than, some 3-0 foe that I'm banging that night. That's, if it comes from the 3-0 foe, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. If it comes from a significant other, like a girlfriend or, your wife, husband, your parents, that comes off a little differently. Those insults from those people who are close to you, who are supposed to back you up, that makes me feel some sort of way. Yes, we all have to be independent. We all have to grow up and do our thing. I get it.
Right.
But when does a parent's job start? To me, stop. To me, parenting stops when you die.
Oh, I totally agree.
At the same time, you find individuals, we're living longer these days. You can have, 90, 120, 12 aged grandmas, not knowing certainly what's going on, but she can still say, you're with that girl? Her butt is too big. And it's like, you don't have to insult her that her butt is too big. Maybe your grandson, great-grandson, likes a big butt. But just because grandma says she's got a big butt doesn't make it wrong. Or, even better, doesn't mean that you have to hate it too. And that's kind of where the insults go. They just...
Yeah. I picked the word child in particular because it triggers me.
If I call you a child, if I say, Warrior Waldo, you're a child, how does that make you feel?
If we're having a conversation, you're not agreeing with me, instead of telling me why you don't agree with me, you're just acting like a child. That means I take that as because you're degrading me because I'm not seeing something your way.
Right.
Then the word child has to be used. You're being immature. You're being a brat. You're being a little kid. Those to me are the insults. Are all synonymous with each other. When you're trying to have a conversation with someone, and you're not agreeing. They're not agreeing with you. You're not agreeing with them, and they don't like it. So they take your behavior, and you're just being a childish. And I bring this back to warriors and how we deal with things when we come back from a deployment, because
or coming home from work if you're a police officer after a hard day of getting shot at or something.
It kind of it goes into PTSD and all that.
Sure.
But you're being you come home or come back from a deployment. We haven't decompressed properly, and I'm not saying that we have we have a right to act a certain way because we have a rough deployment. It's something you need to work on.
Yes.
But if saying like, look, with somebody telling you when you come home and you're acting, you're having a discussion, it turns into a disagreement. Instead of calling someone a child, why not just say, look, I understand you're going through, we're not, just take a break or something. We're not understanding each other right now.
Oh, right?
Coming home from a deployment and acting a certain way or you sit there and something about the kids get on your nerves. Instead of understanding what you're trying to say, they're trying to say, "Oh, you're just being a child, or you're immature, because you're not understanding. You're not understanding what's going on around you, or you're being kind of molded to react a certain way because of your stressful job,
Right.
emergency responders, or a stressful deployment." To me, there are a lot of. There's insults. You call me ugly. I don't care. I mean, if your wife was calling you ugly, I'm like, what the hell did you marry me for?
Right.
I mean,
You knew you were marrying her for. Well, I haven't changed any.
Yeah,
Maybe I've gotten a bit fatter. Maybe I'm a 3 now.
And another thing that gets me is the hypocrisy. They will call you names, but don't you dare call them the same thing. They tell me you're looking fat. Okay, you're gonna call me fat, but if I turn around and tell her she's fat, oh my God, look out. Can't do it. That's part of the hypocrisy, and I think it's more prevalent today, in today's society, where it is legal to call men of certain things, or to accuse them of certain things, but it can't be turned around the other way.